You're listening to Answering the Call with Pastor Landon Mauricio and Call Church. Call Church exists to connect people of all generations with Jesus by equipping faith, building authentic community, and mobilizing to impact the world. Stay tuned for honest topics and real conversations about living out your calling in today's world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Answering the Call. My name is Landon, and we are so excited to have, really, we caught him at the right time to do this interview, but his name is Tim Philpot. Can you just say aloha and hi to everyone?
Well, aloha. This is my first time in Hawaii in over 20 years, so I'm looking forward to a great day today.
Yeah, and let's just kind of give people the overall kind of scope of your life right now. Like, you're here on a layover in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And we caught you. Kind of shout out to Jeff from CBMC. He was like, "Hey, I'm going to pick Tim up from the airport and bring him right to the radio station, right to this show." And so you literally just came off of a 6.5-hour flight.
Yeah. I'm coming in from India. One of the things I've done during my lifetime was that I was president for CBMC, Christian Businessmen's Connection, International. So I traveled to 67 countries back in the day. This is, over 20 years ago.
Wow.
But one of my key places on earth became India.
Okay.
So I still go back to India quite often. And I was there for 2 weeks recently, mainly for a wedding, but also to do some teaching and preaching and that kind of stuff about presenting Christ in the marketplace. So India has been a main focus for me.
Yeah.
In fact, I tell everybody you need to specialize in your ministry if you can. So I'm a lawyer and was a judge for 15 years. So my ministry has focused on lawyers and then secondly golfers, because I am a golfer and I have a whole golf ministry thing and have written a lot of stuff about that. But the third place is India. So I tell everybody, if you want me to come, it needs to fit into one of those three categories. Yeah. Otherwise, I say no. So a golf trip with lawyers to India is my perfect sweet spot.
that is like, oh, yes. And, I'm glad that you said that, because the whole purpose of this radio show is it's named Answering the Call. And we're just talking about how God has given us a call, just to be sons and daughters, to Him, but also like a very specific call to reach people. And like what you're saying, you're going to reach people specifically that I can't reach, right? And I want to be able to reach people that you won't be able to reach because of our stories and our backgrounds, and just your background of being, from being a lawyer to a judge, a golfer. When we first met just 15, 20 minutes ago, you're like, "Do you golf?" No. But that's because like what you're saying, you're looking for people that's going to be their language, right?
You're right.
And so what's really cool is seeing like how you're using those things to reach people. Mm-hmm. And so you're doing a little layover here in Hawaii right now because you're actually headed to California to do a golf event. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, my latest writing project is a novel called Player's Progress. I don't know if you read Pilgrim's Progress when you were a kid, but it's the second most read book in the history of the world after the Bible. John Bunyan wrote Pilgrim's Progress in 1678. And my book is Player's Progress, which is a golfer's version of Pilgrim's Progress. All happens in Scotland. But I now do retreats based on all the principles in the book. It's mostly a study on the book of Proverbs.
Okay.
And the novel is a search for a treasure. And so there are three treasures that you find on this mythical golf course in the Orkney Islands. And one of the treasures is I try to help people understand that your spouse is a treasure. Your wife is a treasure. Yeah. I was a judge in family court for 15 years.
Wow.
So I began to understand a lot of things about marriage and divorce and family that I didn't understand before I was a judge. And so, anyway, your wife is a treasure, and I'm sure you easily would agree with that.
Oh, absolutely.
And then the second treasure that they find on the golf course is a friend. He discovers that his friend is his treasure, the key guy in the book. So the word friend is probably the most important word in the English language for anybody that wants to be an evangelist.
Wow.
I've almost never heard a testimony from anybody that did not include the word friend. I think I've heard maybe one or two people say they got saved watching TV.
Sure.
One or two.
Yeah.
1 or 2 million have a testimony that says something like, I had a friend.
Yeah.
I had a friend at work. I had a friend here. I had a friend at the golf course.
Yeah.
So if you want to be a good evangelist, you have to spend 95% of your time just making friends.
Yeah.
So that actually happened on this trip. I mean, 4 days ago, I was actually playing golf at Royal Calcutta Golf Club in India, which is the second oldest golf club in the world, formed in 1829. The British took over India back in the day.
Yeah.
And so this Royal Calcutta, I'm like the only person I've ever met that has actually played there. But I was there for 2 days, played golf with 3 Hindu guys who are very wealthy golfers. Only the wealthy play golf in India. But I had 2 full days to build a relationship with these 3 guys. Absolutely fantastic.
Wow.
And ate with them, played golf with them. We're really, really good friends now. We're already planning a return trip. I'm going to bring some golfers over there. They're excited.
Well, that's awesome.
I'm from Kentucky, and this one guy had gone to the University of Indiana, so we had all these things in common, all built around the game of golf.
Yeah.
So if I invited him to come to my church, the answer would obviously be no. If I invited him to any kind of a spiritual conversation, the answer would have been no. No, I don't want to meet with you for an hour or 2 hours to talk about religion.
Yeah.
But golf? Yeah, let's go play golf.
Yeah.
So it's a key. And so now I've got these guys on my heart. The main number one key for the ministry of CBMC is praying for people by name.
Yep.
By name. Not just in general.
Yeah.
And so we keep a little card in our pocket, the 10 Most Wanted card, where we pray for our friends that are lost.
Yeah.
It's okay to pray in Sunday school for your Aunt Sally who's got arthritis, but it's I don't do a whole lot of that because I got too many lost friends. I've got dozens, hundreds even, of lost friends because I hang around the golf course and I hang around the courthouse.
Right.
So if you're hanging around the courthouse and hanging around the golf course, you're going to be living your life among pagans. 1 Peter 2 says, live such good lives among the pagans. And sadly, a lot of people that are doing their best to live the Christian life almost have no pagan friends anymore. They get involved in church and they stay there and they love it. It's comfortable.
Yeah. And,
they heard a sermon someplace from somebody that said, be careful, about getting yourself dirty in the world.
Sure.
So anyway, I do the best I can to live my life among the pagans. And like I say, when you're a member at a country club, Jesus said it's almost impossible for a rich man to go to heaven. Almost. Very true statement.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm coming off of being filled with India in my heart right now. So it was a lot of literally meeting with the poorest of the poor. I met Mother Teresa twice back in the day, and I went back to the place where she's buried now.
Wow.
And I spent some time at her home for the destitute and the dying in Calcutta. And literally the poorest of the poor. And then on that very same day, I was at Royal Calcutta Golf Club with the richest people in India.
Yeah.
And they're both lost.
Yeah.
But the Bible really teaches that the most lost people are those rich guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I'm, I try to, anyway, I've spent most of my time in the business and professional world trying to reach those kind of people because they really are so lost.
Yeah.
So you've heard the parable of the lost coin and the parable of the lost sheep and the parable of the lost son. Well, I've got a parable of the lost golf ball. And so about a year and a half ago, I heard a little voice, I presume the Lord, telling me to, I was walking by myself at the golf course, and I found a lost ball. The Lord said, put Brian's name on there, one of my buddies there who's lost, very lost. So I put his name on the golf ball, put it up on my shelf. And so every time I find a lost golf ball now, I write a name down there. I've got about 65 names up on my shelf now.
Wow.
And I've got 3 or 4 or 5 fantastic stories already about stuff that's happened. So evangelism doesn't happen by us trying to make something happen. It literally, I mean, I had to get fairly old. I'm 73. I had to get fairly old before I really, really, in my heart, believed this. But it does absolutely 100% start with praying for somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you pray for somebody, this may not be good theology, but I believe if I pray for somebody, they will be saved. Now, that's hard to believe, but and what happens is a whole lot of circumstances happen then. All of a sudden, somebody's calling. He's calling me.
Yeah.
So they initiate the contact. So it's all very natural, and so that's been the key for the ministry that we have in CBMC is praying for people by name, building friendships with people, and then at the right time sharing Jesus Christ with them. Not your denomination, not your church.
Yeah.
You know, I hate to say this, but I literally never invite somebody to church ever. I just don't.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I don't know what's going to happen when they get there. I simply, you're a pastor, so I know this is what you're doing. You're preparing your people to go out and be the witnesses on Monday. That's where the action happens.
Yep.
Sunday's supposed to prepare us for the real work of the kingdom of heaven on Monday through Saturday. So that's been my life, has been trying to be a witness, if you will, in the marketplace.
Yeah, no, and that's super awesome. And so, you don't just have your 10 most wanted. Now you have these 65 golf balls with people's names on it. And I've heard it said this way, that a lot of times we need to talk to Jesus about our friends first before we talk to our friends about Jesus.
Perfect. Yeah.
And it is crazy because a lot of times we're not even praying for them before we go and talk to them about Jesus. And it's in that prayer time where God is going to help us understand what they're going through, how to even navigate those conversations.
Yeah.
And like we were saying, like the main goal isn't just to get them into a church; it's to get them connected into a relationship with Jesus.
Jesus alone. Yeah. Jesus is Lord. The conversation even with this Hindu guy, awesome guy at Royal Calcutta. There's always a point of contact, and very quickly he told me that even though he's Hindu, he had been to a Catholic school. I said, "Oh, really? Fantastic, man." And I said, "I met Mother Teresa twice." Well, his eyes bugged out, And I said, "Let me take 30 seconds and tell you my Mother Teresa story." Because I was sitting with her and telling her how great she was. I was a senator at the time, so she let me in for a little audience with her.
Nice.
And she got tired of hearing me talk, and she reached over and touched me on my elbow, which was her way of telling me to shut up, really. She was kind of a grumpy little old lady, to be honest, but in her own little way, but which you would understand if you've been to Calcutta. I mean, it is a depressing place. It is a dirty place. It is a place with not a whole lot of Jesus there, and she's taking care of the poorest of the poor, so she's got a right to be a little grumpy. But she says this. She said, "I'm not good," and then she turned her eyes toward heaven. And she simply said, "Jesus." So within the first 10 minutes of my conversation with this Hindu at Royal Calcutta, I told him that story.
Yeah.
As soon as he told me that he had gone to a Catholic school, I said, "Well, you probably know more than most Methodists do. I'm a Methodist." He says, "No, not really." He says, "Because we were exempted out of having to go to any of the religious stuff, so I don't really know all that much." But I said, "But I presume you have great respect for people like Mother Teresa." And he says, "Absolutely."
Yeah.
So I told him that story. So he got the gospel.
Yep.
And it didn't turn him off. Mm-hmm. Nobody is ever turned off by Jesus.
Yeah.
Ever. They're turned off by something that's happened to them, maybe.
Yeah.
In some kind of religious atmosphere.
Yep.
But Jesus, he came for everybody, including these lost Hindus in India. Believe it or not. So you're too young at this point to understand what I'm going to say here, but the older you get, the more confused you get in a way.
What does that mean?
Well, when you just end up with lots of questions.
Sure.
Like the way I say it is one of my mentor who's gone to heaven now, but he called it exploding ignorance. When you have a question, you go looking for the answer. And you always will find the answer, but while you're looking for it, you'll run into 10 more questions.
Sure.
So you can't go to India and live there and see what happens at the home for the destitute and the dying, and see some other scenarios with beggars and little children without, if you're being honest with God, saying, hey, God, come on, man.
Yeah.
Can't you do better than this?
Sure.
Come on, man. You start playing your little religious games, and you start getting just a little more serious and a little more honest with God.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to pretend like everything's okay.
Yeah.
I have a pretty honest relationship with God. I stay half mad at him half the time. Like, come on, Lord, can't you do something better than this?
Yeah.
But the truth is, I also have a greater appreciation in my older age now, though, for the bigness of God and the greatness of God and the sovereignty of God. He's got this all figured out, and so I'm not worried about it at all.
Yeah, and it's that perseverance, that the Bible talks about. Like, there is going to be trials, there is going to be questions, but it's through all of that you're going to persevere, and you end up in a place where you lack nothing, right? And it's that intimacy with God, realizing how big He is, how great He is, and it's like, okay, God, you're still in control, And so it's cool to see, like, even just from your golf background, like how that those conversations, those little interactions with people on the golf course can open up that avenue of the gospel. You mentioned something, so this golf event that you're doing, there's going to be time for golf, time for lessons. It is a retreat designed to kind of like lead people in a godly way and through different life lessons. And one of the things that you kind of opened up with was talking about your spouse as a treasure. Yes. Right. And so you were a judge in family court. And so one of the other books that you wrote was talking about just the death of marriage in America. Yeah. Why don't you dive into, like, what is that about?
I tried to write a scholarly work to define marriage. And I pretty much failed in that. I spent a couple of years working hard on trying to do that. I went around asking everybody, what is marriage? And nobody gave me a good answer. There's not a good answer in the Bible, by the way. There's not a perfect answer in the Bible for what is marriage. So I took a crack at it, and I turned the book into a novel, because I tell stories, and so I told stories that are loosely connected to my life as a judge in family court. So the name of the book is Judge Z, Irretrievably Broken. Those two words are a key in every divorce case for you to sign the divorce papers, and I signed thousands. You have to make a finding that the marriage is irretrievably broken.
Wow.
So those two words, though, have a double meaning in my novel, because while I wanted the book to be a book that helped define marriage and what it is from a spiritual standpoint and a legal standpoint, it's really interesting legally, by the way. I mean, why do you have to get a government license, for instance, to be married? Well, this is relatively new in the history of the world. Marriage has always been a religious thing, not a government thing, until the last 150 years or so. In fact, in the old days, to get a divorce, 150 years ago, if you wanted a divorce, you had to get the legislature to pass a bill to divorce you. You couldn't just go to court and get a divorce. There's a lot of states where there were one or two divorces in a year.
Sure.
And now everybody's getting a divorce. So I tried to write the book about marriage, but as I got into it, I realized that the book was more about the tragedy of divorce. And so than anything else. And I think our culture has completely forgotten how tragic divorce is. But the primary thing that happened for me is when I was 60 years old, I finally began to understand some things. And a judge in family court, I began to understand that marriage is the greatest metaphor marriage is the best metaphor for the relationship that God wants to have with us. And so I started off like most people do, thinking of God as my judge. I'm standing in front of him in a courtroom, and he says, my son has died for you, so I'm going to have mercy on you, and you're forgiven, and off you go.
Yeah.
So it's a judicial way of thinking about God. And I graduated from that to thinking of God as my father, because at that point, love enters the picture.
Right.
And that is still pretty good picture. You know, you can preach a lot of good sermons working off of that.
Sure.
But the third one, beyond the judicial model and the father model, is the model of that we are the bride of Christ.
Yep.
And God is our husband, Isaiah 54. And so it's all over the Bible that we are his bride. You know, at the end of the day, it's going to be a wedding. And there's going to be a wedding someday.
He's coming back for the bride.
And Landon, you're the bride. You know, you're the ugliest bride I've ever seen, but you're a bride. So I was 60 before I began to understand all that. So writing that book helped me begin to understand what marriage really is.
Yeah, and so like even just those two words in the title, that double meaning. I mean, so it's a legal, verbiage.
Yeah.
From divorce. Anything else that like in the book?
Yeah, the double meaning is that the judge himself, which was somewhat biographical of me, became irretrievably broken.
Wow.
In the process of a lot of things that happen in the courtroom. So the other part of that is that if you really want to know God, you have to be broken. If you really want to know God, you have to experience some sorrow and pain in your life.
Yeah.
You know, if you want joy, there's sorrow that comes with it.
Right.
You know,
right.
Joy is different than happiness and contentment. Joy is something that we all want and we have at times, but you're not going to have true joy unless you've had some sorrow in your life. And so irretrievably broken means, you know, yes, we get saved at some point, praise the Lord, but at some point you're probably going to need to really be broken before you can know him like he wants to know him.
Yeah, no, for sure.
He'll break us down.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's a very, very. I didn't even know that those two words were even just in that legal document.
Yeah.
And you know, so you're retired now. We have a couple more minutes left. What has been? I mean, you've been talking about a lot of things that you have been doing. You're a CBMC ambassador, but even just more so, just an ambassador of Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, himself. What are the things that I guess like are coming up? I mean, that gets you excited in now like your retirement years. I'm just doing all the things I used to do when I was working. Okay.
The way I explain it is that because of the judge position the last 15 years and then being in politics as well, I have a pension. And so the state of Kentucky is paying me to be a missionary. That's the way I say it.
That's awesome.
I don't have to raise support. My pension is more than adequate to support my wife and I. We never had any kids. And so that kind of freed me up, too, to do a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have done otherwise. But
sure.
That part of my speech I gave in all over India was that we at one point we discovered that even though God never gave us biological children, he's given us lots of children in India. Visited a couple of schools that I'm involved with there. And family court. I mean, you can't imagine how many kids I had in family court. So I don't have a paid job anymore, but I'm really just doing the same thing I've always done for the last 40 years, which is get out of bed, 5 to 7 a.m., the most important times in life. 5 to 7 a.m. are with Jesus.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the day takes off, just trying to shine some light. So that's basically what we're doing. Yeah.
That's awesome. That is so cool. Thank you for having this conversation with me. I know I mean, you're going to have to be back in Hawaii. We'll put on a golf thing.
Yeah.
That he'll come back.
I like that. Yeah.
And, but I appreciate you even just sharing just those little wisdom nuggets that 5 to 7 a.m. I heard it put this way that changed my perspective too. That, an orchestra doesn't tune after a concert.
Yeah.
We need to spend the first of our day with the Lord, and that sets it up, right. And so thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you.
Man.
For everyone listening, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, aloha.
Aloha.
You've been listening to Answering the Call with Pastor Landon Mauricio and Called Church. Tune in every Saturday at 6:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. for honest topics and real conversations about faith and community. Looking for a church community to call your own? Visit Called Church at Moanalua High School Sundays at 10 a.m. For more information, go to calledchurch.org. Called Church, making Jesus famous.